All right, all right. Welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon, and I am Jose Rodriguez.
And Rohi Zachariah.
And today, Rohi, we got a jam-packed show happening with the city of Madera.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a detailed breakdown of what we're going to discuss today?
Oh my God, it's all about the roads, Jose. It's
all about the roads.
So I think it's important for a lot of people to know kind of a lot about what's going on in their city. Especially right now, we've talked about it a few times, how the city is going through kind of a growing pains in a sort of, a lot of areas of town are either under full construction like on Yosemite or just new development with either housing or construction of commercial areas. So the question's constantly coming up as far as, why do our roads look so bad? And usually it follows with, because I'm paying so much money in my taxes, right? So I know we've had a few city council meetings, and I'm sure the entire town logs in to watch those on a weekly basis when we have them, but there's still some uninformed individuals that have questions about our roads. So.
For sure, and it's not uncommon for me to get a comment from one of my constituents, and they'll address, hey, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
There is a pothole by my street, or what about the roads down Yosemite? There's some construction being done prior to Caltrans coming in.
Yeah.
That has left some people obviously unhappy with some of the work. Some of the asphalt or the last rain that we had really messed that thing up a bit. But nevertheless, people want to know what's going on. Why is it that you hear our roads are not being addressed or maintained, right? And I think we are going to talk about it, and we're going to give you our opinion, right? Obviously, we're two council members that sit in the city council. We have these discussions as a council, but on the side, Rohi and I'd like to bring it back and maybe let some of you bring in your comments, because I know it's a hot topic around here.
Yeah.
People talk about, well, how come I don't have those sidewalks? Why is it that my roads look like crap? Why can't you fix this? Why can't you do this? But let me tell you where we're at, why it's been here, maybe some history as far as why certain roads have dilapidated as we continue to bring in new subdivisions, or we continue to bring in new housing. 30 years from now, some of those areas will have some issues surrounding their sidewalks and or maybe possible roads. And it happens with time. It's wear and tear. So we have to continuously fix that, seal them, and here's kind of where we're at years later, right? Yeah. So, Rohi, if you don't mind, you want to share some pictures,
get connected in here, but before I get connected, I'll say the easy one out at first. I know the question keeps coming up about Yosemite and, it being essentially just, complete mess. And I think it's good for everybody to understand that right now they're finishing the project for the water pipe that's under there first. And then I believe, is it June 1st or July 1st when Caltrans is coming in to do the road diet? I know it's coming up here soon.
Yes, it's coming on pretty shortly. I think they're just waiting for us to finish up so that they can start construction on that.
Yeah, because I know that's always people's frustration is that, look, why aren't they fixing the roads? Why aren't they paving it? Are they going to leave it like this? And it's kind of, again, it's a multifaceted project that fixing the pipes, and there's no need to fix the pipes and then fix the road, and then Caltrans comes back in like a month or two and basically starts this giant project of the road diet. So I think it's good for everyone to understand that it's going to be looking a little ugly for at least a couple more months until Caltrans project steps in. But I think that's a 4-stage project that comes in that puts the roundabouts and the road diet and everything, and then it'll be nice.
And then we're hoping that that creates a better aesthetic appeal, but at the same time, it also alleviates some of the traffic congestion that you see there. Yeah. The roundabouts, of course, are studies have shown that more continuous traffic can get people out faster, right? But you also have a downtown that would look a lot better aesthetically, and hopefully we get a lot more business out there. That's the plan. And Caltrans' way of putting this is to try to connect communities, because in the past, with highways coming alongside cities, obviously that created a disconnect for a lot of cities, right? You have State Route 190, you have State Route 145, but you also have Highway 99 that split the city, right? You have the east and west, and that's some of the conversations that we have around here. Well, if you live on the east side or if you live on the west side, well, again, it's these highways, these capacity projects that have cause some concerns among citizens, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, we want to try to address what we can here at the city level. So one of the things that we do have is our road condition, and we have this thing called a PCI, which is Pavement Condition Index. And what does that tell us? Rohit, that tells us how our roads are citywide, how many linear feet we have, and what does that look like as far as, we have miles of roads, but at the same time, how do these roads compare to, if you had expectations or standards of roads, a PCI, it's exactly what that gives us. That gives us like a rating of where we stand. And Rohit, take that away, but where are we at with that?
Yeah, so, that was kind of an eye-opener. I mean, I think that came in at one of my earlier meetings that this came about. And, I think the big thing that they stated at first as far as a game plan, in a sense, is if the city was to try and decide to do a full revamp to bring everything up, I think it was like $120 million that was required, which it doesn't take, too much to understand that that's it's not really feasible. But, I know the discussion at that time was, an agreement that we want to have a plan in place, even if it takes a little while, to just slowly bring up that PCI index. And there was a couple different strategies that we're taking on as a city to kind of make that happen. But it does leave residents, in a sense of like I heard last week of why not me? Like why is my road, or that feeling of my road is not being addressed? And I think, hopefully there'll be a little bit more interactive map available for residents. But, that's kind of the question is, people should understand maybe what their current rating is, so, yeah. So, because that would take a lot of frustration, because the index, there's a couple examples from our report showing like, if you have like a 95, this would be somebody who probably lives in a new development. Your roads just got paved not too long ago. And, there might not be buttery smooth like you would expect, but there's still nothing really that needs to be done. And it kind of goes through we get to a degrading state, for instance, where you get to like a PCI of 59, I think this is where on the maps they'll show like a yellow where something like a slurry seal, which is kind of just more of a capping, can be done. And I remember that was the other thing that hit me is, understanding that like a slurry seal and the cost per yard compared to like a full reconstruction of a section of roadway, and how it dramatically increased. And again, it emphasized that the city's plan needs to kind of have a little bit more proactive maintenance program, or else, if we got everything perfect and we kind of had that maintenance program, it'd still be a lot cheaper than kind of just letting it go until we just have to fully dig out the road. So
yeah, and just to give some context, Rohi, when it comes to this PCI, the arterial road or miles, centerline miles, are about 81 miles, and the total lane miles are about 163.
Yeah.
And that PCI, or the grade that they give us from 100, is about 66. Again, I'm giving you, these are numbers given from a study that was given to us back in 2024, presented through the MCTC, right? And why do we have the Measure T up there, right? Well, I mean, Measure T is what provides a lot of the that half-a-cent sales tax that comes back to our local roads and maintenance, and especially for like slurry seals and what have you, right? All those maintenance that we do, we depend a lot on that Measure T. So we have collector roads, right? And those are about 28 miles, 58 lane miles, and that has a PCI of 64. And then you have your residential local. This is where the heart of it is, right? 143 centerline miles, but 283 overall lane miles. And that PCI is at a 57. So you would think this is where the majority of people, especially our local folks here, residents, complain about, because you see that 57, and that just tells you how our local, your streets, your neighborhoods are at a 57. And that's unacceptable, because back in 2016, I think we were showing a 65 and compare to where we're at today at a 61. So it's actually declined, really. It's actually declined. And this is where the city now has put a priority in trying to make sure that we address these roads and that are dilapidating, right? And we have to keep it somewhere. Our target line is to stay somewhere in the 66 to 68 PCI, so that we're somewhere considered fair, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be excellent, like you said, at these new subdivisions, because doing that would require a ton of money.
Yeah.
Especially the cost for linear foot would be quite a bit. So the city has addressed it through a study, and obviously there is a map that we can link down in our deal later on, where you can kind of see where these more fair, good, better, and not so good, really poor conditions. And those poor conditions are where the city's trying to do steps like a 10 by 10. I think we've initiated that here around the city now, where if we see really bad sections of road, then we're trying to do 10 linear feet by 10 linear feet to address these and patch these. I know patching isn't always going to be the solution, permanent solution, but it is a current fix to try to bring those roads up.
Yeah.
So I think that context is important, so people understand that, you know, we have quite a few miles, over 506 miles of roads that need obviously constant maintenance, right? And if it's not these slurry seals, it's not the maintaining our asphalt or whatever we have to do in order to bring that PCI level up. It's constant work that requires a constant flow of funding to be able to get that. So where does that money come from, right? And that's where you as taxpayers have decided that 1/2 cent sales tax certainly helps for local roads. Yeah. And now with this new measure that we passed, a good 80% or 85% of that is going back to your local streets, so we can utilize that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I just thought I'd share that with you, Rohi. I'm not sure if you have any pictures you'd like to show.
Yeah.
But we can certainly bring some of the pictures up. But meanwhile, tell us a bit more about, you know, with sidewalks and what have you. I know.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, we can argue both sides. I mean, the sidewalk, I know the city has had, for a little while, a sidewalk project, mostly to, I think the first part of it was to, you know, maybe add some connecting, because obviously it doesn't matter what side of town you're on, there's a lot of area where there may exist a sidewalk and then all of a sudden it just disappears and you're walking on dirt until you get to the next section. So I know part of that was kind of going back in and kind of looking at, I hate to say patchwork, but patchwork over town of, you know, let's add sections of a sidewalk that, you know, maybe where either around school areas or high traffic areas. And then now they're going back through and repairing sidewalk areas that the existing sidewalk is there, but it's in poor condition. And a lot of that has to do with, unfortunately, you know, trees that were in, you know, not the right trees to plant, especially near a sidewalk, and trees that were planted without something like a root barrier. And now, I mean, they're buckling and they're becoming a safety hazard. And so it's kind of nice because, again, that's all over town. There's not like it's a this side or that side kind of problem. It's something that every part of town has, but again, it can be a frustration because it's not like we're not taking like a starting point and just saying we're going to start here and just kind of move on. We're going to maybe do 10 feet here, 10 feet on the next block, 10 feet across town, and to some people that may look a little odd because it's like, well, but you stopped here. You didn't fully go the whole way, you know, and it's just kind of like, well, that was the area that was addressed as it needed in the most.
Yeah,
time,
and I think when we look at sidewalks, right, when I go out and when I'm canvassing, right, or I'm out campaign season, it seems like that's when we get out and look at these streets, right, because we don't really, unless you're walking your streets every day, you're looking at them, right, but there are areas where you have these lifted sidewalks, especially alongside Granada. You know, especially if you come down Granada past Riverview, you'll see a lot of sidewalks.
That's bad.
Yeah,
that's bad.
And you know, the unfortunate thing is that those become hazards, right? And they're trip hazards. So the city has done a better job of trying to get those resolved as well. And I think last week, or I'm sorry, on May 6th, our meeting was exactly to provide us an update on where we're at with sidewalks. And I think we had quite a bit of those sidewalks already. We're working a lot of them. And we're continuously working on them, but to get to every single one of them, I think that's the key. There is how do we address these? And unless folks are telling us, hey, my sidewalks here have become a hazard, then it's hard for us to go out there and look at everything. The city is proactively out there looking, and they prioritize based on our capital improvements and or projects that we have for sidewalks. But we'll get another update today as well.
Yeah.
We have these constantly, and if you have any issues with your sidewalks, feel free to reach out, not only to Roy, myself, but whoever your district representative is. But at the same time, I encourage you to come to the city council meetings. We have these meetings the first and third Wednesday of the month, and our meetings start at 6 o'clock. Feel free to come out, make your comment, let us know what are the areas that are being affected so that we can address those as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he or she who has the louder voice is going to get addressed first. It's just giving us awareness that, hey, maybe we missed something. And we're not perfect. Like I said, there's over 506 miles of just roads and streets that we need to address, but there's also hundreds, if not thousands, of sidewalk miles that we have, and we're trying. I'm sorry, feet, because I did see the report. It was over 9,000 feet, 13,000 feet of repairs that need to be done as well. So if there's anything out there, let us know. We're more than happy to address that as well. Roy, any other issues with our roads? What else do you see out there? What else is on our report there?
I mean, again, it's a lot of, so just to look at the numbers of the difference. So I mean, at some point, the maintaining of a roadway through like the slurry seal, you know, the difference of it's $2.50 a square yard versus $30 a square yard. You know, so it becomes 18 times more expensive if we do the deferred maintenance style of build it, just leave it alone until it falls apart, and then come back and repave it. You know, and that was kind of. I mean, I hate to say for our, you know, where I live, that's kind of the approach where we take the constant maintenance every 5 years. We do the slurry seal, and again, it's something that it makes a huge difference, and it's definitely more cost effective than, you know, just let it go, let it fall apart. Yeah, we'll deal with it later kind of mentality. So I would say that it would be nice to, you know, fully adopt that, not just do these repairs, but also have, you know, some kind of maintenance program that continues, you know, everything going. I think the difficult part also for you know, for residents to understand, and I know we've talked about this before, is, you know, as our city kind of expands, so not just, you know, rebuilding or patchwork of infill type projects, but like, you know, as we build in because land is kind of cheaper the further west or the further east you go, it increases the amount of roadway we have to maintain. You know, so it's not just looking at, well, why aren't we keeping up the current roads? It's understanding that every year we're adding more roads to our maintenance schedule. You know, so as we add these new homes and these new developments, it's just more and more stuff that we have to keep up with. So I think, you know, Madera as a whole, we have, you know, now a better understanding about where we need to go. And even this report, I mean, this was something that we didn't really have a fine tool to go to and identify, like, this is the road. And I think that, like you said, that 10 by 10 program is in even finer detail to understand that while a road as a whole may have a decent index, that there might be this small section that really is torn up, or maybe it's got a giant pothole in that 10 by 10 can kind of come in and address it much easier than saying, you know, hey, we're going to have to redo this entire road for this little small area. And that was something that last week, you know, that was one of the longer discussions I was having with somebody was, you know, because they were talking about their entire road. They're like, you know, they paved up until a certain point, but they didn't pave my road. And it was kind of going back and really trying to reemphasize that, like, maybe the entire road wasn't necessary. Maybe that was just the worst area, and that if we can identify maybe a smaller section that needs that attention, it's something that can be an easier ask, I guess is the better way to say it, than saying, hey, pave this giant entire area for a small, you know, section that's degraded. So.
Yeah. And you know what, Rohi, the questions that come across is, well, I pay my taxes, right? Well, do property taxes and or other taxes associated with roads, are they sufficient to cover the cost of maintaining roads today, especially here in California and more specifically in the city of Madera, right? And this is a general question, but I mean, it's a fair question because it's good to know where funds are coming from, right? Because you can only rely on property tax, especially in the city. If you look at the breakdown of every dollar that goes from property taxes, you'd be surprised how much the city gets back from that. It's not a lot. It's not a lot because the majority of it goes to education, then some of it comes back to county services, and then the city gets its little portion there. But that is not sufficient to maintain for all services that the city provides with relation to property taxes. But also there's some state gas tax, vehicle fees, SB1 funding, there's highway user tax, local tax measures that we have like Measure T, and we talked about that earlier. When you have all those funds in one pot, you know, you look at it, and even at that, really, you still have a shortfall. So, I mean, you want to be able to say, in a case like your HOA, for example, right?
Yeah, I was going to bring that, but yeah.
Because the HOA works within your HOA because you're serving a small community, and the linear road miles or feet that you have there, linear feet that you have to take care of in that little gated community, well, it may be cheaper for now, but as the infrastructure continues to take some wear and tear, and the cost of paving it continues to skyrocket, or not skyrocket, but it goes up. You know, you have to collect and assess, because now you have to assess your residents for that, right? But do you think that that's more appropriate in certain neighborhoods where you would say, you know what, well, let's come together, because people already feel that they pay sufficient taxes, and they say overwhelmingly pay more taxes than any other, I mean, obviously any other state, right?
Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, and I think that, you know, when you look at, like, for instance, like you said, the HOA that I live in, I mean, it would be very easy as a resident who lives in there to say, well, wait a minute, I pay these taxes, but the city doesn't actually provide any service to our road repair. Like, we actually maintain our entire road ourselves. You know, so I don't remember the exact number of actual, and it's not, you know, it's probably not even a mile of roadway that we maintain ourselves. But I think when we did our last paving, it ran about $50,000 was our bill, which again, every 5 years we do. So $10,000 a year is our budget to maintain that roadway. You know, it does bring about a good question, because it almost makes you feel like, you know, because anybody can, you don't have to be in a gated community to form an HOA. It does almost open the segue to say, you know, maybe some of these micro HOAs should form and collect their own fees, and then, you know, use the money to simply maintain their own roadways with, you know, maybe like a slurry seal or something. I mean, I don't know that it's a perfect answer, but it works. Again, for our area, we have about 118 homes in our community, and like I said, we put that on our plan as far as, you know, a cycle every 5 years to maintain our roads. And yeah, I mean, our roads are in a much better condition than the average roads, you know, in the rest of the city. They're obviously a lot less traveled, so that could play a good portion of that. But, you know, I think that when you say, is it feasible, I don't know what makes us so special in the sense of why ours is working and why it couldn't work somewhere else, you know. So, I mean, that may be something, you know, residents look at, is how to form some kind of, you know, micro HOA, and whatever homes want to join it, and start collecting your own fees and saying, hey, we can take control of our own roads. I don't even know if that's a legal option. Yeah, but I think it is.
I think you'd have to go through some Prop 218. You'd have to get, I mean, because we have this with our landscaping districts, right?
Yeah.
We have this concern because a lot of these landscaping districts that we have within the city, which is, there's quite a few, really, and we've had that come before us there, but a lot of these landscaping maintenance districts, what happens is that you have maybe 4 or 5 homes, right? And the landscaping is done at a certain rate that didn't build in a CPI or some type of index to allow for the cost of what it costs to actually do the maintenance.
Yeah.
So if you want to increase that, and we have over 50 to 70 of those landscaping districts around the city, then you'd have to go out for a 218 vote. And, you know, you have people that may protest and say that's not fair. And most likely, who wants to increase their taxes? And I can tell you it's not favorable, because every time we try to do that, or we go out and have these votes, then people will tell you we already pay sufficient. So it's not like you have this momentum of people saying, yes, come and tax me some more. And I'll give you a prime example, because back in 2022, when we first ran the Measure T, we went through a standard, you needed over 3/4 voters to say yes, or 66%. And that failed, and it failed miserably, because just people were not, the trust that they have in government right now was not there, right? Especially when it comes to these specific dollars being allocated for not only roads, transportation in general, right? So you had a lot of opposition from environmental justice groups, and you had also some other communities that didn't disenfranchised, felt that this wasn't a deal. So again, we ran. This was picked up by a citizens initiative committee that ran it, and obviously it passed it with 50% plus one. But you're starting to see measures. Like for police, for example, people do feel that, hey, in order for me to live in a city, I want to feel safe, and they overwhelmingly passed that Measure K, with over 70-some%, really close to 80%, because the sentiment there was that safety was key. Well, I mean, do people feel the same way about roads and stuff? Because when you talk about these HOAs, remember, you live in an HOA, you're subject to the assessments. Sure. And there's going to be voting and what have you, but it's within your community saying, hey, we need to take care of this park. Yeah. We need to take care of this. But how do you do that in a grand scale of a city, right? But
that's why I would say, for me, the argument, and especially having lived in one, is much different. I think the frustration comes about when you say a tax. It's exactly what we talked about earlier. You're taking my money, like I'm paying into this fund, but yet you're not fixing my road. You're fixing whatever you decide is the most important. And like I said, that's where I would say the idea of like these maybe it's a block, or maybe it's a couple block micro HOAs that come about. I would think that people who join it with the understanding that any fees that I'm giving in is for me. Like if my little HOA is taking care of 2 blocks of roadway, like it's not like they're gonna only pave like a little corner. We're gonna maintain our roadway. So I think it's just, that's really as a taxpayer, or hearing people as taxpayers speak when they're upset, is because it's the feeling of, I've given you my money, but I don't see the return. And we're always constantly, like we just did, well, the return it's over there. You see that pothole? We fixed it, but it's not my pothole. I know, but we used your money to pay forward and fix somebody else's. We're going to come to you next. And that's what I'm saying. That's where I think the difference in that HOA strategy is that I'm paying more. You're collecting a certain fee from me, but it's understanding that we're not taking that money and saying, well, we're going to go somewhere else and spend it. Like, you see a direct spending in your own community, like that, whether it be our park, or whether it be the road, what I mean? It's there.
Yeah, and looking at it through a micro scale, yes, you're going to see that. But let's take, for example, energy, right? I mean, we are energy consumers here in the city, right? We spread that bill, or those rates that are designed by the Utilities Commission. Public Utilities Commission, they decide, hey, these rates need to go up because we are now increasing costs because of the repairs that we had to do here. We had these fires, or we had these other areas that require more infrastructure, but we have to spread the cost across everyone, right? And that's a prime example, because here in Madera, I mean, you don't see those kind of disasters that take place, but yet we bear the cost because we are energy users, and when the premiums go up, or in this case, I mean, you can say that about insurance, and you can say that about energy, then we bear the cost as well. And we're not seeing that infrastructure taking place here, it's taking place elsewhere, but because it's a whole, they have to spread that across. So when it comes to roads, I think you're looking for priorities, and this is the hardest thing to be when you're on the council, is when you look at this priority list, where do you want to concentrate? And if you're a representative of District 2 or a representative of District 1 like yourself, then I think you're going to want to fight for your districts, your respective districts. But at the same time, you have to look outside of it and say, well, where's the biggest need? Where is the biggest need that's been overlooked for many years, right? Where can we address these issues? Right? Are these roads even salvageable? If not, then you're going to go pour money into something that frankly may not. But I mean, you have to look at it when you say that kind of pour money into these areas. I mean, that's you shouldn't look at it that way. That should have never happened. But again, the neglect and kicking the can down the road, that's what will happen. Not only to that area, Rohi, it could happen to areas in any other neighborhood. And I don't blame the people that complain about it, because for long periods of times they've been asking the same question: what about me?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. The
Right?
HOA idea is more to say, like, not that but to say, like, okay, like you said, District 1 or District 2, like you've collected a half-cent tax, right? And tracking that would be impossible at this point. But like to say, like, District 1 has collected this many $1 million from, and then they get to spend their pot for District 1. What I'm saying? Like, that's the HOA mentality is we collected this money as an HOA, but we're spending it on the HOA. It's our money, we spend it in ourselves. Where the city says, hey, collectively, you guys have collected $5 million, but Jose's district gets it this time. He gets $3 million of it. And we're like, well, wait a minute, but why are we getting left out? So that's what I'm saying. Like, the argument of, I wouldn't say everybody needs to form an HOA, but it gets to that because it's that micromanagement of saying, like, it's our money, we've collected it, we get to spend it where in our area gets into a battle. Now, obviously, the flip side is when you have an impoverished area that isn't going to collect as much, to fix the road still costs just as much as it does on either side of town. Now you just go, well, hey, I'm sorry, you're not collecting enough money.
But and here's the misconception to that, Rohi, is that we think that the impoverished areas don't collect money, but you'd be surprised how those areas thrive in local
so you're
economy.
agreeing that we should do that then?
Local economy. No, I'm giving you some context, because local economies that are working, for example, downtown, Rancho San Miguel, East Madera, those areas they're buying. They're spending money. They're spending dollars at the gas pump. They're spending dollars at the grocery store. They're buying whatever they're buying out there, right? And at one time, Rohi, the concentration of council members was not spread out evenly or by districts, because it wasn't districts. So obviously, if you and I coming in with biases, and not to say that this is the case, but it happened in the history, not necessarily in Madera, but in all areas, where you and I and maybe 3 others live within a square mile or less than that, and we feel that this is the allocation of this money that we've collected in this pot should be spent here. Who's going to speak for these folks that have also contributed for years and decades, but yet their roads don't look up to par compared to other areas, right? So that would be a challenge that I'd have, right? If I was representing, I represent the city, but I'm just saying in general, if that was me, I would be saying, hey, what about me? Here's my argument. Why is nobody looking at it? So I think that when you talk about HOAs, it's I'm willing to fork out an additional money to make sure that my community stays up here. Because that the current amount that you already pay, you're not exempt from property taxes because you belong to an HOA.
Sure.
You're going above that and saying, I want to keep this up a little better condition, right? And I think that works to HOAs, but there's also HOAs, Rohi, that have failed and are failing because they no longer can keep up with the assessments in order to bring up this thing. And guess what happens? And it happens with a lot of maintenance districts. If you go up northeast Madera County, you have a lot of these districts that were developed at one time that no longer can maintain their roads because there's not enough people out there to do it. And the cost of maintaining those roads are expensive. But guess who eats up that cost? The county. The people. You have to share it across. So anyways, I just thought I'd make a point there because it's a very good argument. And if we all had our own, had their own HOAs, I don't know, man. I'd like to see how you track those dollars, and I'm sure there's ways of tracking how those dollars are made. Because if you're looking at sales tax,
well, that was more
yeah.
like to give it a Hunger Games mentality of understanding that, like you said, if it's tax dollars collected in my district and it's spent in my district, I think you would get the mentality of people, like we've been trying for a long time, to say not only stop going to Fresno and shopping, but shop in your own district, because that's money's going to stay in your district. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
It's just it's an emphasis again, more and more, and not just saying stop leaving Madera, but also just shop where you live.
No, I totally agree.
And but because like I said, that's where the only argument for HOA is that the money collected stays with our area. Now, yeah, I 100% agree. There are many failed HOAs. You're talking about humans. You're talking about, again, imagine
mismanagement,
multiple, like, a city council, but on multiple scales, like, maybe half are going to fail, and then what now? I can totally understand that. It takes a different mentality of management to be able to manage that money. It's just simply looking at the idea as a taxpayer, the comforting feeling of saying the money I have given is coming back to me, and not being like I'm giving you, my $5,000 or whatever my tax bill is, and then saying, well, you're not really going to get any of that back, or thank you for your donation, but we've donated it to the next guy who needs it more. Yeah, there's a nice feeling about that, but what happens when I say, okay, now I have the pothole, I'm paying every year, how do I get that addressed? And that's obviously what we have to go, unfortunately, petition for and get moving, but it seems like the program should be a little bit better to say, like, this was your micro pot of money that if you need these little minor repairs, okay, here, you can spend it as needed.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, like I said, I think those are good conversations, and
yeah.
I think when we come to prioritize these roads, streets, and sidewalks, I think this is where we have now a responsibility to see where do we want to place priorities, right? Mm-hmm. What's been dilapidated, what needs, and I think through this PCI, it's helped us now gauge where areas of our city are in need of repair, right?
Yeah.
And without this, it's like a map, right? Like a roadmap of where we want to go. And hopefully we drop this in there, Rohi. We'll drop the link of where the map is so that people can see what's taking place. We thought this would be a good segment. We've talked about it before, but we'll continue to talk about it. And if you see us live at the city council, you'll also notice that these updates come often and frequent, so that we can continue to talk about these. But more importantly, if you have any comments, feel free to chime in, like, subscribe, and more importantly, give us some ideas of what topics you think are important for our city. But given that, Rohi, we're coming in at 37 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and say thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week.